shows on the live on YouTube. Just search for Radio Caribbean International on YouTube, of course, and be sure to subscribe to that page as well. Now, if you want to call in to tell us what's on your plate today, the number to do so is 452-3046. That's our mainline number, 452-3046. As well as our WhatsApp number. You can call in to 724-0008. You can, of course, also message in to that WhatsApp number. Again, it is 724-0008. Some birthday wishes for today going out to Mr. Jonathan Johannes. Happy birthday to you, sir, and wishing you the very best of birthdays. We do hope that you have a splendid celebration. And also sending birthday greetings out to Miss Courtney John. Happy birthday to you, Courtney. And we do hope that you're having a fantastic birthday celebration. Bit of history for today. In the year 1912, a bust of Queen Nefertiti was found at Amarna in Egypt. 1941 on this day, the Imperial Japanese Navy with 353 planes attacked the United States fleet at Pearl Harbor Naval Base in Hawaii, killing 2,403 people. In the year 1965, the Roman Catholic Pope Paul VI and Orthodox Patriarch Athenagoras I simultaneously lifted mutual excommunications that led to the split of the two churches back in the year 1054, known as the Great Schism. In the year 1988 on this day, PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization delegation, led by Yasser Arafat, proclaimed the State of Palestine, recognizing the existence of the State of Israel for the first time. And in 2022, this last year, after widespread public protests, China announced a major loosening of COVID-19 restrictions for the entire country, allowing home quarantine and scrapping QR codes, effectively ending China's zero COVID policy. And tomorrow, we're going to be having the first ever investment forum being put on by the newly minted Youth Economy Agency. That's happening right here in St. Lucia, and we're going to have some guests coming in to tell us all about that in just a bit for our Dish of the Day. The Daily Dish is brought to you the kind compliments of our good friends at Tiles Plus.
One tiles for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need tiles for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Big tiles with unbeatable cost. Customer service, A+. With all kind of tiles, come down to Tiles Plus. We also got glassware and vanity. Box, doors, you'll see. Come down to mind nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Land Street in Castries, Bosses, Grozile, and Slack Street in Beaufort. Telephone number 453-7939. Tiles Plus.
Serving now, the Daily Dish.
And welcome back to our program for today. And of course, we do hope that you're having a good one, despite a bit of rain earlier on today. And tomorrow, hopefully the weather will be very nice for an upcoming event. It's happening. It's called the Investment Training. It's a Investment Training and Investment Forum of the Youth Economy Agency. And of course, that is one of the many various engagements that the Youth Economy Agency has been putting on over the past few months as they have been recently established. And to tell us a lot about that is the communications lead at the Youth Economy Agency, Mr. Terry Finister. And of course, we're also going to be speaking with a very special guest who is one of the presenters for tomorrow, Dr. Tamu Petra Brown. And we speak about that in just a bit. But Terry, welcome to the lunchroom. And of course, thanks for joining us. And as usual, keeping the youth economy front and center in the minds of young people around the island.
Thank you so much, Calix. Always a pleasure to be here, and certainly always a pleasure to be talking about YE and the work that we are doing. Tomorrow really is an exciting engagement for us, an exciting initiative that we're undertaking. It basically puts a cherry on top of the work that we've been doing as far as being able to support young businesses with grant funding, support them with training, support them with mentorship. We've been able to assist well over 300 young businesses at this stage. Nearly 300 businesses have been able to access grants. We've seen young people being able to get into manufacturing, into tourism, being able to get the inputs, the equipment that they need, being able to take advantage of the concessions through the Youth Economy Act to be able to import some of the materials that they need in order to pursue their small businesses. And some of these businesses, existing businesses that have been working for a number of years, some of them really literally coming from the idea stage. You know, people who want to be able to start something and they want to know how they can get a little bit of seed capital for them to get off the ground, how they can get the training that they need. In terms of training, we've been able to do training for over 160 young people in business planning. Our second cohort just completed, as well as in an introduction to digital marketing, where we've had over 60 young people trained in digital marketing, introduction to social media, introduction to SEO, website design, outreach, etc., etc. And we have also just completing our mentorship program, where we've had over 30 young people involved. They've been twinned with established business people. They've been doing one-on-one coaching sessions once per week over the last 6 months, give or take. So we're nearly at the end of that program. But the big one really is the investment forum tomorrow. We've just done some training, investment training for 12 of our entrepreneurs, where we had 2 days working with Bank of St. Lucia. Thanks so much to them for all of their support as far as the investment training is concerned, where they've been looking at all of the various aspects of investment, alignment, what works for you, how you go about seeking investors, how you can pitch yourself, how you position yourself to be able to get, whether it's local investment, whether it's external investment, what are some of the investments that you as a small business need to really target, what are the ways in which you prioritize where you put your money in order to get the best possible returns. So they've been doing that for the past 2 days. And tomorrow, they're going to be part of over 150 people who are going to be at the Finance Administrative Center, where they're going to be taking part in about 6 hours or so of exchanges, presentations. We're going to be looking at some key industries. We're going to be looking at some key areas of possible exploitation. And we have some wonderful presenters, panelists, young entrepreneurs, coaches, business leaders, Jimmy Fletcher, Donna Regis Prosper, of course, the Secretary General of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, our dear guest here today, Tamu Petra Brown, Raphael Sol is going to be our keynote speaker, Clemvio Hodge coming out of Anguilla. So we have people from around the Caribbean who are experts in their field, who are going to be able to lend that expertise to the people in the room. There's going to be, of course, a degree of interaction. We have Invest St. Lucia on board, Export St. Lucia, a number of other agencies that we are very pleased to be able to have with us to support these young people and to try to get them really the goal of this exercise ultimately to get these young people to the next stage, the next level of their business journey, and to see how we can accelerate their movement from where they are to where their dreams, their goals, their ambitions tell them that they want to be. And where they want to be, we are here. Ye exists really to support the success of those young entrepreneurs.
Fantastic. And it's really hard to imagine that this was just formed like back in August.
Just over 6 months.
What format? Well,
August last year.
August last year.
The
act was passed. Then you actually established in terms of an
April
office.
This year. Just over 6 months.
April this year. So you're
as a baby, we shouldn't even really be walking yet.
Right. But you're walking, you're talking, you're running, and you're doing some really fantastic work. You now have a new chief executive officer.
Yes, Brian Vidal.
In the person of Mr. Brian Vidal. And, of course, coming with a lot of banking experience at the central bank as well. Maybe there's a connection here. I'm not sure if you, Dr. Brown, you, Brian, coming out of St. Kitts, of course, the home place of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. But this is your area of expertise, Dr. Brown, Tamu Brown. You do this coaching, investment training. tell us, why is this important for a young person, a young entrepreneur at this point in time to really take the time off to understand this whole concept of investment?
Right. So it's important because I think that we have been experiencing a paradigm shift when it comes to what entrepreneurship is. And I believe that young people have understood that the traditional paradigm of the micro business, the small and perhaps the localized nature of business, that has passed. And because of globalization and to some extent even COVID, because COVID has opened us up to the possibility of trading across borders and that being normalized. It wasn't so normalized for us in the region. And when we begin to talk about what we want our Caribbean economies to look like, the truth is that we want businesses that can scale. And to scale, you often need someone else's capital. And the truth is that debt financing, often that's safe financing, and banks don't want to take the chance on innovative ventures, on the AI ventures, on ventures that don't look like the traditional venture. And so coming to an investment forum, I think, will position a youth entrepreneur to understand what should be the necessary next steps if you are actually going to create that type of scale and an investment ready business, right? Because it's one thing to want investment, but it's another thing to be investment ready. But I think that every entrepreneur who wishes to grow should consider investment as the next natural step.
Now, this is really, really important, because the whole concept of the Youth Economy Agency has really been to look at very fledgling businesses, businesses that are really just starting from scratch in a lot of instances. They're not even really considered startups from the perspective of maybe the United States when they speak about a startup. This is below zero maybe starting point. For a lot of these businesses, people just have an idea and they want to they want to get into something. I mean, how do you see this transitioning? Because it's really important that the youth economy is coming in to say, hey, we're providing you with some help, but this is not the end of the story. You're going to have to begin, as you're rightly saying, this is not just about walking. This is now about soaring and flying and doing that. And this is where individuals like Dr. Brown are coming in to guide
Absolutely.
this process.
And, you talk about the signature phrase of the Youth Economy Agency, turning hobbies into businesses, coined by the Prime Minister. And there are a lot of people who still retain the hobby side of it, and that's and if that's where you are, where you're comfortable, you're happy, that's fine. But there are also a surprisingly large number of people who have big ambitions, who want to go out there and conquer St. Lucia, conquer the Caribbean, conquer the world. They want their products to be on shelves in Yonkers. They want their products to be on shelves in Belgrade. They want maybe not Belgrade right now, but they want their products to be on the international market. We're seeing Martelli's Ocean Gardens just working with Invest St. Lucia and exporting to New Zealand. Moss Boss earlier this year exporting to Australia. He's now on scholarship, actually doing hospitality in Australia. Obtronics doing work across the Caribbean. And there are a number of others. There are people who are producing food, who are producing, manufactured goods, who want to be able to export, who want to be able to reach an international market, who want to be able to take advantage of all the very many opportunities that are out there. And some of them are poised in terms of not just their mindset, but in terms of their actual company, the life of their company. And we try to meet people where they are. So yes, there are some people who are brand new and they're not quite ready to make that leap to reach out to the world just yet. We want to be able to continue holding their hands and try to guide them so that they reach that kind of level. But those who are ready, we want to help them to see what are the hurdles, what are the obstacles, what are the challenges. And hurdles are wonderful things because hurdles are meant to get over. Hurdles are not there to stop you. They're not brick walls. They are meant to get over. And even a brick wall you can climb over if you're sufficiently agile and so on. So we want people to be able to get over those hurdles, move on, get to the next, be able to navigate the world. And this forum tomorrow, the facilitators that we have there, the presenters that we have, the knowledge that's going to be shared is going to be so invaluable. We even have people we have some of our clients who are now overseas who are reaching out to us and telling us, listen, we want to be able to stream it. Good news is that it will be live streamed, it will be archived, it will be available, so folks can come back on Saturday, on Sunday, whenever next they wish to go on and take in all of the wonderful content that's going to be shared tomorrow. But the content, I think, is going to be absolutely invaluable, not just for our star clients, but for anybody who wants to get into business, because part of the journey, Alex, is really recalibrating the mindset and getting people to think about reaching that next level. So it's not just about people who are already kind of there, maybe there. It's also about saying, hey, I know you're happy doing your little side hustle, you're happy doing your little hobby thing, but maybe you can take that and change that and do something different and move it on to the next level.
It's very interesting that you're saying that, because there are a lot of people, of course, as Dr. Brown mentioned, especially during COVID, were almost thrust into this hustle economy.
Right. The gig economy.
The gig economy. That's the term, exactly. And it was necessary. It was a way of surviving, really. And they've continued doing that. But it's a whole other game now to take that from maybe being a sole proprietor, you're doing your own thing, to now scaling up. To becoming an employer. Speak a little bit about that, Dr. Brown, the real challenges of scaling up for a small business.
The challenges are numerous, but not insurmountable, obviously. But what I think has been missing is that there has not really been a canvas or a model or a roadmap that speaks to how one scales in the Caribbean context, which is really different from the North American context. And we face some challenges that the North American entrepreneurs do not change, least of not logistics. That alone, right, is an enemy of scaling in the region. However, what I think is exciting about the initiative that YE is undertaking is that they are coming out very early to help, right, to handhold and to help, and through the act really, to help facilitate the move from small to medium to large to scale. I created a roadmap. It's called the High Growth Entrepreneurship Roadmap. And that was particularly for female entrepreneurs in the Caribbean context, because what I found, I'm an educator by profession, of course an entrepreneur by trade, but what I found was that the canvases and the models, they didn't really speak to how women lived their lives, and there was nothing in the lexicon really regarding how does one scale in the Caribbean context. And so I created the HER roadmap, or the High Growth Entrepreneurship Roadmap, to do that. And I think that as educators, trainers, coaches, mentors, as we begin to create frameworks that are suitable for the Caribbean entrepreneur and the Caribbean realities, I believe that is one step in changing the way we look at scale and how people scale. So sometimes when we talk about scaling, we talk about just what the entrepreneur can do, but we forget about the entrepreneurship ecosystem and the role that the ecosystem plays in scaling.
And of course, you're speaking to the role of government, the role of financial institutions, academic institutions.
Yes.
I mean, that is really important, as you're saying. We hear about these North American experiences, and we're talking about 300 million people in a fairly common economy, easy to move around. The logistic systems are there. The shipping is there. And you compare this to our neck of the woods in the Eastern Caribbean, small islands separated by water, unreliable transport, which I think is partly why our
if I may really quickly, I mean, our two guests this afternoon have both very recent experience.
victims of our very efficient air traffic. Right? Yes.
So much less if you have to send, perishable goods.
Yes.
Via our air travel in the Caribbean.
I can speak of today, for instance. I was down at the port of Castries, and that experience, which has to continue into the afternoon for me. It's a real challenge.
If you're doing
certainly.
CMOS or you're doing juices or something like that, and you want to send them over to Barbados today, that alone is. Sadly, that alone is a huge challenge.
But coming back to the issue of finance, because that tends to be a really scary moment for a lot of individuals, of course, and we're dealing with middle-income countries,
right.
Challenges of getting finance, and I think we mentioned the big bad banks, and I mean they obviously don't see themselves as that, but people have this fear of banking institutions. Beyond the year, I mean, what else is out there to look towards in terms of financing?
Well, we're very pleased that we were able to work directly with the likes of Invest St. Lucia, who obviously are, geared towards being able to facilitate introductions, being able to facilitate mechanisms for interventions for our growing young businesses. And in fact, we are going to be doing, as one of the follow-ups from the investment forum, we are going to be doing a session where we have some of those external investment ready businesses meeting in the first instance with local investors, and we are going to have them work directly with Invest St. Lucia with a view to down the road perhaps being able to attract further external investment. On the local scene, of course, we have the SBDC, Ministry of Commerce, as well as their loan grant facility, which is available to persons between the ages of 31 to 60, I believe it is. So there is a little bit of overlap there. We have the likes of Bell Fund and so on. So there are a number of other agencies which are doing parallel work. And we don't want it to be so parallel that, the parallel lines never touch. Right. We don't want it to be so parallel that we are not working hand in hand. We do try to work as closely as we can with the Invest St. Lucia's, the SBDCs. We have been part of the Ministry of Commerce roadshows, for instance, and a couple of the other outreach programs that they have done. We also, one of the important things is that we have to look at where people are developing skills. And so we have worked closely with NSDC. We've worked with Sir Arthur Lewis Community College because we want people to, develop those aptitudes and then be able to put them to use. So where we come in is telling you, listen, you've just finished doing, say, CMOS farming, learning how to do CMOS farming or learning how to grow mushrooms with the Taiwan Technical Mission. Here's how you can take that skill that you have just developed and make that into a legitimate business of your own.
Indeed. Dr. Brown, you were speaking about, of course, that ecosystem and the importance of that ecosystem. Are there any shining stars out there in the Caribbean, countries that you can say they understand it, they've got it?
Jamaica has it.
I was thinking that you were probably going to say exactly that. But,
yes, Jamaica has it.
Speak to that and that ecosystem, the support system that exists in Jamaica.
So I think it is obvious that there is political will, regardless of any change in governance. So that is important, right? That you have a strategic understanding, regardless of who's in power, that developing entrepreneurship is of utmost importance to the development of the Jamaican economy. So that's the first thing. Many of us in other regions, that once a government changes, we almost tear down to rebuild. Hence, we are stuck in a state of underdevelopment. What Jamaica does especially well is that they create a space where there's a lot of access for coaching, for mentorship through the Jamaican Development Bank. They have a very robust venture capital framework. The development bank seeks to look at innovative financing models outside of the traditional debt models that we're seeing. Then you have JAMPRO that is solely focused on that export space. And their securities exchange has been lauded as one of the best in the world and certainly in the region. And if we're talking about investment ready businesses and businesses that need to raise capital, you need exit, and that exit is through the stock exchange, going public, etc. And so really they've moved, gone through the whole value chain to create that ecosystem. And I also think there is something to be said for the mindset and culture. Jamaicans are very assertive. They are very unafraid. And I think that in the OECS, we still suffer from this type of shyness and sometimes an inability to see outside of our borders. And I just wanted to make a note regarding the conversation with Terry around investment and other forms of financing. I think what's important for entrepreneurs in the region to understand is that the world is shifting and everyone needs to have a bent towards sustainability, climate mitigation, climate adaptation, because that's where the money is. That's really going to help you scale. Like the real money in the Green Climate Fund or the Green Climate Readiness Fund, which helps you get ready to approach the Green Climate Fund. But from some recent training and experiences I've had with the Green Climate Fund, they are looking for projects that span multiple countries. And so when we talk about scale, we really have to scale our mindset in order to really access the type of funding that's going to make a difference.
This is very, very rich in terms of the conversation that we're having today. And unfortunately, we don't have enough time to finish it before we take a break because we need to take in our weather report. I think we're going to do that at this time. And let me just, before we do that, though, just welcome to the studio our other guest who's also going to be participating in tomorrow's investment training forum. He is Raphael Saul. He's 35 years, believe it or not, and he has achieved so much in terms of corporate training. An attorney, an entrepreneur, background in working in telecommunications with Flow, and has worked in so many different islands. Welcome. Thank you so very much for joining us on the Lunchroom in Radio Caribbean International's.
Well, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And let me wish everyone a wonderful good afternoon. Really rich discussion so far, and I think that we're definitely on the right track in terms of capturing what the essence is that will help us to drive youth entrepreneurship forward as a region.
Wonderful. And so with that said, we are going to end our dish of the day and then head across to take in our 12 noon weather report.
This has been The Daily Dish.
One tiles for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need tiles for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Big tiles with unbeatable cost. Customer service, A+. With all kind of tiles, come down to Tiles Plus. We also glad gasway and vanity. Box, doors, you'll see. Come down, don't mind nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Land Street in Castries, Bosses, Jugos, and Slack Street in Beaufort. Telephone number 453-7939.
Make your home merry and bright with Island Styles massive Christmas sale. Our wide range of porcelain and ceramic tiles are on sale up to 50% off. And that's not all. Save up to 15% off. Bathrooms with bundle and save. The more you buy, the more you save. On gorgeous bathroom vanities, bathtubs, faucets, shower glass, toilets, and more. Plus, contractors and tilers are in for a treat with our special discounts on tiling tools and accessories. Sale out now at all locations: Castries, Rodney Bay, and Beaufort. Or call 450-452 or 453 Tile. It's time to deck the halls, deck the walls, or even deck the deck with huge Christmas savings only at Island Style.
And welcome back to the Lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. Apologies for that. We seem not to have the weather report available for midday. But yeah, it looks pretty cloudy out there, and we just got quite a lot of rain in the city of Castries. Thankfully, no flooding as yet. And so we'll hopefully get something out of the Met Office soon enough. But we're discussing the matter of youth entrepreneurship. Of course, it's been a significant flagship for the current Philip J. Pierre administration, the development of a youth economy. And the lead flagship in this effort right now is the Youth Economy Agency. They are, in fact, putting on an event tomorrow. It's a culmination of a couple of days of training, and it is dubbed an investment training forum and also an investment forum as well, all in one. And we've been having that conversation, wonderful conversation, on the matter of entrepreneurship and investment and the challenges of scaling up. We're having that conversation with, of course, Terry Finister, the communications head at the YEA. I think that's the correct pronunciation of the acronym. The YEA, YEA. YEA, yes, YEA.
Double use.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yay.
I say yeah, but okay. Anyways, we
So we're exuberant about it.
that's up for debate. And of course, we're also having Dr. Tamu Brown on board with us. She's going to be presenting tomorrow as well, native of St. Kitts and Nevis, I believe, but certainly a wealth of experience all around the Caribbean, and in fact has her doctorate in this area of expertise. And also, we just had, thanks to our efficient LIAT, not LIAT anymore, Inter-Caribbean service there coming in, Mr. Raphael Sol coming across from Barbados to join us. Of course, this event, 150 people, as you mentioned, Terry, going to
Yes.
be benefiting. And I'm getting the impression this is already looking like it's going to become an annual affair.
One hopes so, yes, absolutely. I think it should become a staple on our calendar. It should be, I think, very well received. We had well over 150 applications in the space of just about 2 weeks. Somewhat similar to our business planning. Our first business planning, when we put the solicitation out, we had funding for 100 people. We got, in the space of about 7 days, 400 plus applications, and people calling in and asking, how come you're closing already? And so we clearly filling some gaps. We clearly doing work that people think that they need. And that's gratifying, obviously, but it also speaks to the fact that we need to press on and we need to kind of build on what it is that we are already doing. So, like I said, I mean, we're doing some of the basic interventions as far as the funding. We're doing some of the kind of longer term interventions with the training and the mentorship, where we're doing more work to actually build those companies. The next step really is being able to get those companies to change their mindsets and to see how they can start thinking longer term, how they can start thinking bigger scale, how they can start thinking with greater ambition. And those which are already starting to trend in that direction, the likes of, and I can mention some of them, the Martellis, Obtronics, 76 Savage, Zan, the Local Bites, those companies that are already starting to think in that direction, we want them to really realize those ambitions.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And business models, these ecosystems, I mean, we've heard how some countries around the world have been able to do that. I think the Japanese have their model, the Koreans, I think it's called Chaibol, and how they all come together and cooperate.
In Africa as well.
Africa?
There are a lot of the women in Tanzania specifically. I have a client, a Tanzanian client, and they use their susu, partner hand, but they use their partner hand to invest in businesses.
Okay.
Yeah, really something different. So that's a model.
Right.
That we can adopt. So sometimes when we're talking about investment, what does that look like culturally?
Right.
right? And so we discard some of these old traditions, not understanding that they really can just be pivoted for what we require. And that client of mine, she speaks to how institutions lend to the partner hand institutions, and that they have, they're like co-ops basically,
Right.
but they use the partner hand model.
Terry, I'm not sure because we're speaking about, of course, the matter of culture and how important culture is in this entire endeavor. Quite often, this idea of the cooperative.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of them come about, but it's been very challenging, I think, in the Caribbean experience. Issues of trust, issues of reliability.
We've had some of those conversations internally. And I think certainly in 2024 it's something that we're going to kind of pick up and hopefully grow into something that really manifests itself to the benefit of some of our clients, because you have a number of people who working in the same sphere, and a lot of the time they see each other as competitors, and they have their trade secrets or whatever have you. We have people who working in food manufacturing. Some of them have a lot of similarities, but very often all of them struggling. Very often, with the one commonality that they have is that they all manufacturing X, or they all producing X, but they all struggling. So we do want to establish that kind of spirit of collaboration. We've seen some wonderful collaborations among our clients. We've seen people who are doing manufacturing using logistics companies that are clients. We've had clients doing websites with one another, doing app development, doing online payments, all sorts of things. But within the same industry, we haven't necessarily started seeing that, but that is something I think we will want to encourage, and something that not just Ye wants to encourage, but something that we should want to encourage as a people. We see, for instance, I think the apiculture folks have something this coming weekend.
The honey show,
which I'm certainly going to be at some point on the weekend. But that kind of ability to work together and to be able to find your common goals and see how we can compete, but there must be some degree of sharing. There must be some shared experiences, some best experiences, best practices that we can look at, and we can say, listen, how do you avoid some of the pitfalls that a newcomer to the industry is experiencing? How does somebody who's now wants to get into producing CMOS, for instance, avoid some of the challenges that some of the predecessors would have experienced? And how do you address those challenges without speaking to your predecessors? So that conversation at some point has to be started. It is not just something that Ye alone can do, but it is something that I think that we do at some point have to get involved in doing, because it is so necessary for us to work together and to see greater collaboration, see greater hand-holding, and see all of us wanting to move together as a people.
This is actually not quite the model that exists in the United States of America and a lot of these capitalist countries. And I just want to have that conversation a little bit, though, because the issue of this breakthrough company, the one that's really going to...
The unicorn.
The alpha, the unicorn, exactly, that's the term. It goes somewhat contrary to some of the models that we see very much prevalent in our neck of the woods. People want to have equitable distribution, very flat arrangement of getting it. But then you actually have this really, really special outlier there that really needs the support and the investment. And sometimes we just miss them in the case of the Caribbean.
Yes. So let's talk about statistics, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm a teacher, I'm an educator. If you look at the statistics around government venture capital, which is kind of what Ye is doing, anything that government is putting money behind, we can speak as government venture capital. The data and the research shows that for developing countries, that it is there is an alignment between the amount of money invested by government venture capitalists and the growth of the unicorns. And so what really is offered as a best practice in the entrepreneurship literature is that government in particular should be the one identifying the unicorns that are in alignment with their national development priorities and moving money behind them. And we're not talking about 10,000, 30,000. We're talking about hundreds of thousands. Now, I used to be in charge of a program called SEED in St. Kitts, which was funded by our Citizenship by Investment program. And we put $150,000 minimum behind what we would call, our best practice.
Right.
And they would go through a boot camp program. They would pitch, all of those things. But I feel what was significant about that program, apart from the money invested, was that after the acceleration period, there was an incubation period where the government provided every venture that successfully passed through to that stage with an entire management team. And so for a year, they had a manager, an operations manager, they had a marketer, and they had an accountant paid for by the Citizenship by Investment program and the Sugar Industry Diversification Fund. And those businesses are $1 million businesses today. And that was in 2016, 2017. And I think this is a best practice. And that's why I've always been talking about regionalization. And, where are we sharing best practices so that others can adopt? Because I think that the Youth Economy Agency and the Act, I feel like it's a best practice act. But who else knows?
Exactly.
Right?
You now have to multiply this across
Correct,
the region.
right? And that also provides a level of harmonization as well when we're trying to collaborate and trying to scale. If we have a very similar, political structure and framework. So I think these are some areas when we talk about ecosystem and understanding research.
and what the data is actually
and what
telling you.
the data says
Because
works.
the reality is most businesses do tend to fail,
Yes.
especially youth entrepreneurship led businesses. Now, of course, people can call in, and we do normally allow calls, and so the number to call in is 4523046. I noticed the line was blinking a while ago. So if you do want to ask any questions regarding this upcoming investment training forum that is on tomorrow, and okay, so you wanted to make a mention of something?
I just wanted to run through.
Sure.
I just wanted to run through the program.
The program for tomorrow. It's happening
some
at
of
the
program.
Finance Administration Center.
Yeah, and we get it underway at
You're
9.
fully booked, though.
We are fully
so
booked
no
in
walk-ins,
person. We
unfortunately.
are fully booked in person.
Okay.
Registration was online. We got more than the number that we bargained for.
You have to do
But
another one soon, I
yes,
guess.
but we will be streaming. So you can look on the Government of St. Lucia social media pages as well as our social media pages to get the specifics as to how you can tune in. We will be hearing from Donatian Gustav, Dr. Donatian Gustav, promoting investment in agriculture towards sustainable agri-food production and food security in St. Lucia. From Mr. Clemvio Hodge on promoting investment in digital economy, digital business and technology for entrepreneurial viability. Dr. James Fletcher, somebody told me this morning, who's Dr. James Fletcher? And I said, Jimmy. I said, okay. Artificial intelligence, positioning St. Lucia for economic development, knowledge-driven entrepreneurs. Ms. Donna Regis Prosper, promoting investment in tourism and hospitality. Of course, Dr. Brown will be talking about game changers, businesses of the future, the next big thing. I hope some of our participants tomorrow recognize themselves in her presentation. We will have financing options for young entrepreneurs, Eastern Caribbean Partial Credit Guarantee Corporation. That's, I think, Carmen Gomez Trigg from out of Trinidad and Tobago. There's going to be a panel discussion on developing young entrepreneurs featuring Michelle Thomas, Nikolai Lanzico, Peter Prosper, and Johansi Kazabo, all young entrepreneurs in their own right. And, of course, Mr. Raphael Saul will be doing our feature presentation, Investing in Youth Entrepreneurship, Millennials and Gen Z as Trailblazers.
Wonderful. Now, I want to touch on a somewhat controversial matter, and that of gender in entrepreneurship. And we've been seeing.
Oh, Dr. Brown.
Well, I was actually going to throw it to Mr.
Oh, you were going to throw it to
Mr.
That's
Saul.
fine.
That's
all right.
fine. That's
But,
fine. And then I'll tag Dr. Brown.
First question.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's a featured speaker tomorrow. And certainly, I'm sure the experience over at the Youth Economy Agency, as well as a number of these other programs that have been run, that the majority of individuals who are coming, who are utilizing those opportunities, tend to be right now female. And it's not a 60-40 split. It's usually like an 80-20 spread.
About 75.
In your instance, about
Yeah.
3/4, right,
Yeah.
coming forward, being females. And we're seeing lots of programs right now being, of course, thanks to the global push for gender equality. In the Caribbean, of course, we're seeing lots of programs. I mean, you mentioned the ECPCGC. They're doing something targeted at females and ensuring that they can get partial credit guarantees. And so many other programs geared towards females.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, though, given what we're seeing right now, should there be some consideration towards some sort of emphasis on males and males as entrepreneurs as well?
It's a great question. Not sure why you didn't ask Dr. Brown, but
We can have a view on it afterwards as well.
I think to have this discussion meaningfully, we ought to place it in its appropriate context. And I think we have to remember that a lot of the initiatives that have been put in place, let's say over the last 15, 20, 25 years, have been trying to reverse historical inequalities, where women have not had the opportunities on the same level that men have. And so what we see now, I think, perhaps could be considered the fruits of a lot of those exercises, where women are now seeing themselves as feeling empowered to go out there and create their own enterprises. There's a greater focus on enfranchisement of women. And to be honest, also, a history where women have not just been the homemakers, but then had to become the breadwinners. And in many instances, the drivers of enterprises and communities. If you're looking at Barbados, from small corner shops, which sold vegetables and became the mini marts or the mini supermarkets of the locality. Many of those were run by the most prominent women of the community. And so what we've seen is that, to be honest, women have taken advantage of those opportunities. And what might seem like an unequal swing towards females now really is a product of a lot of work that has gone in to level the playing field. What I will say, though, is that I don't necessarily see the need for a similar program to be implemented now, seeking to rebalance or to put the swing in the other direction towards men. What I will say is that some of the earlier points that both Terry and Dr. Brown made about addressing the mindsets towards building sustainable and scalable businesses is critical. And what may have happened, I think, over time is, yes, there was a focus on enfranchisement for women, but I think for a lot of men getting involved in businesses, there were unrealistic expectations. There were mindsets that were not consistent with what reality could deliver and provide in terms of the success of those businesses. And to be honest, a lot of thinking small, but with grandiose expectations. And of course, that will set you up for a sense of disappointment and businesses not delivering as they ought to. And you'll find then a revolving door with lots of small businesses opening, lots of small businesses closing. And you mentioned earlier what we saw during COVID. For a lot of entrepreneurs generally, and I'll say for a lot of men during COVID as well, businesses developed as emergency responses, not as thoughtful enterprises. And I needed to get something done now. I needed something to produce some income now for me to meet my immediate expenses. And so I'm going to start doing this thing. And it's always approached in that way. Even after the emergency response period has completed, many people are still building a business in emergency response mode, rather than being in growth, sustainability, long-term enterprise mode. And so I think that those are all a part of the discussion. Mm-hmm. I would not necessarily say, as I said earlier, there is a need for a swing towards building a male empowerment arm, so to speak, of our youth entrepreneurship activities. But I do think that we have quite a bit of work to do, and I'm happy to hear the topics being discussed by my colleagues at the forum starting tomorrow, because I think we have a lot of work to do to address how we are thinking in terms of approaching building enterprises. And that, yes, will span the gender gap, but also will help, I think, to address some of the quick fix mentalities that maybe undermine some of the male entrepreneurs who are trying to build enterprises out there.
Thanks very much for that. Of course, Mr. Saul, Raphael, we skip the opinion of Terry on this matter. And of course, go across.
Thank you.
And of course, Dr. Brown, I mean, we're seeing the data, educational attainment figures, women are far exceeding males at this point in time. Even figures like CEOs right now across the Caribbean. I think we have one of the highest rates in Jamaica and St. Lucia as well. If you look at the public services right now, dominated by women. Are you concerned at all?
I am.
Okay.
So I do have a different point of view, and I have a dual point of view. So the first thing I think is that I sit as the board chair of the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College in St. Kitts as well. And there we do have a significant disparity gender-wise with, of course, women, girls dominating. So it's across the globe, I think, at this point. But when we speak about in the region, if we have to really begin thinking about some of the wicked problems we have, one of those wicked problems in the region is crime. And crime is predominantly being committed by young men, these homicides and etc. And I believe that there is now the time for engagement of young men in profitable activities. And I am not a social worker or a psychologist, but I believe that the lexicon has to change. I believe that, yes, there needs to be programming designed for how boys and men engage. And sometimes the reason that we're not seeing men in these spaces is because, genders have different learning styles. So people in general have different learning styles. And sometimes how we are presenting our programming is not appealing to young men. They don't want to sit in the classroom. Let me tell you, girls will conform. Boys will not. And this is from an educator's perspective. And so perhaps we need to reimagine what entrepreneurship education looks like for the young man and the nature of that programming. The other thing I think, this is not so much about entrepreneurship, but I've always said that when we talk about the underserved boy, or we have these terms, marginalized youth, we really mean boys, really. What we don't ever talk about is, what about the girl who becomes the mother? Where's the engagement and almost the brainwashing? Because we're the ones, as the mommies, who are creating the marginalized youth. And so what is the engagement from a national perspective from the age when a young girl is growing, so that they become women and mothers who mold men that are nation builders? And so I feel like there's a very, it's a holistic look that we have to have. And I think these two things are not popular things to say, but from my experience as an educator, my experience as a mother, from my experience in entrepreneurship, I would say that it's time to build programming that appeals to men and young men in particular who want to engage, because sometimes they feel like this space, they don't belong in this space.
Right.
And so that's why there are more women. I don't think it's because men don't want, but the programming is not appealing to them.
And that, of course, is a major conversation right now in St. Lucia. We're reviewing our Education Act. I'm not sure if that is actually going to come into the mix of conversation, but certainly the matter of education there is so very, very vital. Now, I know we only have like about 5 minutes left, and I suspect there's a lot of other areas that we may want to touch on, Terry, but I did want to get a sense of course, the issue coming back to, where can one see the growth potential? You mentioned some of the companies that are coming forward, but by way of the sectors, I mean, Dr. Brown, you mentioned green. That's
Yeah.
been a major tagline that we've been speaking about for quite a lot of times. Are you seeing that level of interest in
Well,
green
you
and entrepreneurs?
if you look at the program, you'll see some of the areas that we are going to be focusing on in the first instance: tourism, agriculture, technology, and tourism, not necessarily obviously in the sense of 5-star hotels and that sort of thing. We have a lot of great businesses that are involved in tourism. I mentioned Yohante Casabor doing his kayaks down in Soufrière. We have the likes of Elsie Nadej doing water bike tours. Young Montout, Jürgen Montout, who's doing jet skis. We've got Doors Riding Stables. I had a wonderful experience with him for my birthday. Went my kids rode in the water. Father Nature Adventures, whom I think a lot of people locally would know. They have a whole range of wonderful tours, not just for tourists per se, but they're just wonderful. Yesterday I was talking to a young man about some of the areas in St. Lucia that he has no idea even exists, and these are areas that we want people to go out and experience. There's so much for us as St. Lucians to be able to go out and explore and just find out about our country and see how beautiful it is. So tourism is a big area for us. Technology, there's our phones, our computers, they program somewhere in Japan, somewhere in Taiwan, somewhere in Silicon Valley. Why can't a man in Bhutto sit down at his home with a proper internet connection and be able to do exactly that kind of coding, that kind of programming, develop a game, develop, whatever kind of software, apps, etc., and be able to export those to the world. That is the kind of mindset that we're working on. We see soaring leads down in Soufrière, Obtronics, Shagon Rosary winning the Caribbean Youth of the Year, the Caribbean Regional Youth Council Awards. Those are the kind of people, those are the kind of mentalities that we want to encourage and drive. Agriculture is another big one. Of course, agriculture, food security, but also innovations in agriculture. I was telling Dr. Brown about Kwame Joseph. Kwame is a young man who actually was trained in Taiwan, has his BSc, I think, in food technology or something along those lines. But he is doing aquaponics up at Hill 20. And he was talking to me before he went to the Global Youth Trends Forum in Taiwan. He was very happy to be returning to Taiwan. But he was talking about the fact that the intervention from Ye, and again, we're not talking about a vast amount of money, but the injection that he got from Ye was able to get him the equipment that he needed to increase his lettuce and greens production tenfold. Right? And he was looking at, doing his little thing. He's now looking at increasing his acreage, being able to get more equipment, being able to put down more pipes, being able to get even more production out of what he is doing. And so now he's again starting to recalibrate his mind and trying to look forward to being able to do bigger and better things. And we have a lot of young people who are involved in agriculture. I think it's probably one of our bigger single sectors: agriculture, CMOS production, like I said, Martelli's, Ocean Gardens, exporting to New Zealand, Moss Boss, exporting to Australia, the USA, and Canada, I think. He's been exploring markets as far as Dubai and elsewhere in Europe and so on. So those are the kind of people that we are looking at. Those are the kind of sectors that we're looking at. Agriculture, tourism, technology, those I think are three of the principal areas that we'll be looking at. But Invest St. Lucia, our investors, our presenters, our facilitators will talk to us. I don't know if I've mentioned the next big thing in the sectors that I've gone through. You're keeping that that for tomorrow.
What I'm gonna do, because we're pretty much out of time, Terry, I'm going to give Raphael an opportunity to give us a little sneak peek of what we should be getting from him tomorrow. As a featured speaker, and then a bit of the next big thing, maybe just a little idea from Dr. Broad to wrap it up.
Yeah, so I'm a part of a generation that takes a lot of flack globally right now, millennials. And the ones coming after us, Gen Z, perhaps are beaten even more. And terms like them being lazy, entitled, no sense of focus, commitment, easily distracted, unable to commit to tasks, and so on, making them almost villains in workplaces. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about how many of those things are actually hidden gifts that make them uniquely able to be world-changing entrepreneurs, and that we've seen examples of that globally. And I'm excited about highlighting how we can do the exact same thing in the region. So millennials, Gen Zs out there, not only is there hope, but you are the hope. And we're looking forward to seeing all the amazing, energizing ideas and the brilliance that you're going to bring to the youth entrepreneurship landscape of the region. And I'm excited about leading that charge tomorrow.
Wonderful. Thanks so very much, Raphael. And Dr. Brown, your next big thing, what is it going to be for tomorrow?
Well, the next big thing is going to be about revolutionizing one's mindset and radically reassessing your value proposition. Because if you are going to be investment ready and if you are going to scale, what you're doing now won't get you there. And so you have to be open to radical reassessment and revision. So we'll talk about that.
Wonderful. And there is so much to look forward to. Thankfully, it's going to be broadcast, streamed live tomorrow on the Governor St. Lucia's social media pages. And it is the Youth Economy Agency's Investment Training and Investment Forum, which is the first one of its kind being put on. 150 odd individuals benefiting youth entrepreneurs, and it's not going to be the last, so have no fear. There's lots to look forward to, and so we do hope that it is an absolute success. Thank you so very much, Mr. Raphael Saul, Dr. Tamu Petra Brown, and Mr. Terry Finister for joining us here at the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International. Of course, thanks to all our listeners. Sorry we couldn't get any calls in today, but of course you have tomorrow to do just that. I'm your host, Alex Shaw Jr., saying goodbye.